Guys, before you get started, this is a long video. We're going to be covering a lot of information here, a lot of topics. So grab yourself a cup of tea, a coffee, sit down, maybe even run it at 2 times speed. I'm perfectly understandable because I do speak a little slow anyway, but I hope you enjoy the video. So as the thumbnail says, it's been a hell of a roller coaster this year, and the community for Xbox has never been more divided. You've got some that actually believe in the direction that Xbox is going, as they don't care about exclusivity, or they simply like the fact that they can play their games anywhere on their Asus ROG or on their PC, on their Xbox, on a cloud platform, via via a cloud platform like a Chromebook, on a Steam Deck, or mobile phones, tablets, basically enabling them to play Xbox wherever they are without any problems, TVs included. Then you've got the original, hardcore community where they do care about exclusives, they want the console to have value, and they're worried that by devaluing the console, third-party publishers will look at the Xbox brand and just say, do you know what, it's not worth it, and we're going to skip. Now, as of today, the only ones that have really skipped are, indie games, maybe A-quality games, a couple AA, I don't even know any that come to mind. But in terms of AAA, none to this day have skipped. But that isn't to say that they won't skip, and this is the fear that the hardcore community has. And for me, I kind of sit in between, because I've received a lot of benefit from the right side, where Xbox Anywhere, and it's allowed me to game a lot more this year than I could have gamed if I didn't. Whereas I also see the value of exclusives, and I do see the value of having the console. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, and Microsoft is kind of trying to tackle both, but it's clear that where they're coming from, and at least from what I'm seeing, and I really do feel like maybe an AMA or something from Team Xbox, it's never going to happen. Or maybe, some form of Q&A, whatever they need to do. But I think some straight answers, some transparency would do well, because this mindset of how they are treating their most loyal customers, and I think Doc Dark said it best. If you have a OG Xbox, an Xbox 360, an Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, you are the real fan. That is what it is. Now, Microsoft is trying to redefine that. So anyone is an Xbox fan. And I think that is where the real problem aligns, and they're putting more focus into the right. But you know what? Let's have the drop and let's get into discussing it. Now, Snap Blast Play, who's an avid Xbox fan, has posted this, and this I've seen posted by a lot of people, not in like word to word, but the same kind of understanding, the same messaging is coming through. And I've said this time and time again, where, at least from my perspective, people like me who value the exclusivity side, people like me who see the value of the console, and yes, I know there's going to be a console, but it's not so much the console, it's whether those games are going to land on the console. Market share is everything. Those consoles selling is everything. And as trust in the brand continues to diminish, they've only sold 30 million consoles this year, and I say only, that's still a huge amount. But if the next generation they sell 15 million consoles, that starts to become a problem. And then AAA companies will look at that and say, right, we usually expect an uptake of about 5%. Is that 5% going to get us our return of interest? If it's no, then at that point they just look at it and say it's not viable to build for it unless Microsoft is going to drop the money bag. And nowadays, most people are waiting for that money bag anyway. But let's get to this post, because I want to go through it, because I think it kind of highlights the left side. And I'm going to talk about the right side as well, because I think talking about both sides of the divide, and then I'll give my opinion afterwards on where I stand properly, like completely after discussing both. So I think it's important. As an Xbox console main, I have to accept I'm just not Microsoft's priority anymore. As a customer, I've never felt less valued. Now, this is a general point that a lot of people feel, and this is because of their lack of exclusives. Now, right now, you've got games like Starfield, Halo Infinite, the next Halo, Gears, Gears E-Day, Gear 6. You're going to have, the Forza Horizon 6. You've got Forza 5 still, Motorsport. You've got, Fable that's coming, Perfect Dark that's coming. There's a lot of games coming, and some are here, some are not, that at this point in time are exclusive. But just like we saw with Outer Worlds 2, that can change on the whim of a click. No pun intended with Nintendo Switch. Please do not sue me. This was not intended in that way. Just putting it out there. I don't want to see any envelopes coming my way. But you get the point I'm making. The uncertainty is what is driving the wedge with the hardcore gamers. I'm part of an ever-shrinking group of fans that are being ignored for bigger, diluted, more profitable market segments. That is correct. 100%, there's no doubt about that. Microsoft is definitely going in that direction, but there is a reason for this, and I'm going to get to it later. Xbox really kicked off this generation with a clear vision. 2 killer consoles and an aggressive acquisition strategy. That's what we all bought into. Correct. This whole, if you want us to compete, let us compete. That was Satya Nadella's words. I guess he lied out of his teeth too, because he had no intention of competing. His whole point was to get this acquisition over so he can get his master plan into effect. And it worked. It didn't work, simply due to the lack of... Okay. That wasn't planned, okay? It didn't work, simply due to the lack of killer exclusive games from launch. Halo was supposed to be their launch killer platform. It was on the box, and it failed. And there was no quality control at Microsoft to actually make sure that this was going to be ready in time, and they embarrassed themselves. And it was almost a year. It was a year that Xbox had no exclusives. You don't launch a console with no exclusives. A basic fundamental fact that Xbox still fails to recognize. Fast forward to 4 years later, and they seem to be in a completely different place than the console launch back in 2020. Other platforms are now a priority, and Xbox seems to be struggling with their entire strategy. They want to push Game Pass, but conflictingly ignore the console completely, which is the main driver of Game Pass. Now, for me, Game Pass will always be the main driver via a console. You buy a console, you're going to get Game Pass. One version or another, you are going to get it, right? Because it's just part of the thing. I don't really see many people without Xbox Live at all when owning a Game Pass. Now, there may be some of you out there, and I know some of them are going to come out of the woodwork in my comment section, but you are so few and far between that it's not even worth worrying about. The other point is when games come out, they come out at 30 FPS. Now, if your first priority, if you're a first party, your first party games should be the creme la crop. They should be the best quality. They should be the highest standard. They should be what all the third parties looking in should say, damn, man, that is like the highest peak I need to be attaining, or something similar to that. That's what this machine is capable of. But we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is games coming at 30, and then a year later, or 6 months later, getting a 60 FPS patch. That's not acceptable. Because when that game comes out in a year's time on PlayStation, it's coming out 60 FPS guaranteed. There's no doubt about it. They are going to get a premium experience from the get-go. They're not going to get a watered-down experience. And I know some of you are going to say 30 FPS is perfectly fine. I really don't care. That's the honest truth. That crowd, I just don't care. You do you, you're happy, that's fine. But the majority of us, 60 FPS is the standard that we game to. This isn't the PS2 and the 360 era anymore. They released mid-gen refreshes for a reason during the Xbox One and the PS4 days, so they could hit that 60 FPS more often. And when we came into this era, we were promised 60 FPS. I don't need the game to be at 4K resolution. They can easily notch down the resolution a little bit to get that frame rate higher, more consistent. Anyway, let's continue. As a huge Xbox follower, I could not tell what being an Xbox fan means for Microsoft, as it changes every few months, and that is one of the key problems. It changes every few months. There is no clear messaging. There is no clear direction. Like this campaign right now, this is an Xbox. Would you genuinely be surprised if they changed their whole strategy come February, March? There's not one of you in the chat that's going to comment right now to this question that's going to say, yes, I would be surprised. Because you'd be lying to yourself. And that's the problem. Their messaging is so bad that I don't even think Microsoft believes that 3 to 4 months later, this is going to still be the messaging and the strategy going forward. Xbox has always struggled with its own identity since the start, but the ballsy, confident Xbox I used to love is now completely gone, replaced by this new jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none Xbox. I mean, whenever you turn around and ask someone what was the best Xbox era, no one is going to tell you the Xbox One or the Series era of Xbox. No one is going to tell you that those are the best. Everyone goes back to the 360. The OG Xbox set a standard. The 360 rose above that because it knew it had to. It was a giant leap from SD to HD. It just delivered in quantums, and it was the best generation for Xbox. They sold 80 million consoles. Yes, that paled in comparison to the 155 million of PlayStation, but it was still a staggering amount of consoles for a newcomer to sell. And people were genuinely hyped about Xbox and its future. But right now, what we have right now, this isn't the same Xbox we had back then. The competing factor is gone. All of that talk about, if you want us to compete, let us compete. That was all a facade. It was all just rubbish to get through and gain people, let people gain their trust, get hyped that the old Microsoft is coming back when it never was coming back. They were lying to our faces all along. Every step of the way, throughout the whole of the ABK trial. They knew exactly where this was going, even from then. And yes, I'm fully aware that there were concessions that had to be made, but that was generally around COD. There are still ways that they could have actually delivered for their customers. And I hear a lot of people saying now, the only reason to own an Xbox is Game Pass. They are ignoring their core fans, assuming they will stick around while focusing on pursuing customers from everywhere else. Now, we've known that the market has kind of stagnated, yet as Microsoft continues to shrink, they're growing. Whether they're growing within the same space is irrelevant. They're still growing and enjoying that wealth of customers. But PlayStation has hit around, 70 million consoles, regardless of how many of them have been switched on or not. The Switch has hit 150 million, so that's 210 million already. And Xbox has hit their 30 million, so that's 240. We were saying that the consoles don't really go past the 200 million. It's already gone 40 million past it. So this whole, it's stagnating. Sure, it's definitely slowed down over the years. But it seems now more than ever, for some odd reason, whether it's the power of PlayStation or Nintendo or the popularity, they've just risen above and they're still selling quite a lot. From a business perspective, I get it. But from a customer perspective, why wouldn't I go elsewhere and get all the games and feel more valued? Now, this is where I was saying that there's a problem with their messaging. Because as I said at the start of the video, no one really knows if those games are going to be exclusive or not. And I do feel like certain games should be limited to the Xbox console. Or at the very case, the Xbox ecosystem. I mean, even the fact that we're talking about Steam, right? I mean, we say that the games are on Steam. That's not the Xbox ecosystem. No matter how much you want to say that it's on PC, it isn't the Xbox ecosystem. So they've already been giving games to another platform that's outside of the Xbox ecosystem since 2016, 2017, when Game Pass and PC really came into effect. But the ultimate point here is, can any one of you turn around and tell me with 100% certainty that Halo Gears is not going to go to PlayStation day and date? Can any of you tell me with 100% guarantee, where you would be willing to bet your house on it, that Perfect Dark Zero, Fable, will not go to PlayStation day and date? I couldn't tell you that, and I couldn't get into that bet. I couldn't give you 100% certainty. Now, if you turn around and ask me, can you guarantee me that Spider-Man 3 will not be on Xbox day and date 100%? I would say yes. Without a shadow of doubt, it's not happening. Maybe it will be day and date on PC, but it won't be on Xbox. You see the difference there? That's the difference in confidence. I know that Sony won't do that. I don't know if Xbox will do that. If Xbox came out and publicly said, these games are off limits, But they didn't do that. They said there's no red line. And I've already explained why they've said that, because decisions can change and whatnot. But that just cemented the uncertainty of anyone. So right now, the only selling factor for Xbox is Game Pass. Get an Xbox, get Game Pass, you get your day-and-date games as part of your subscription. As long as you're happy with that, happy days. But if you want those games and more, chances are you'll get that over at the other platform. Or over at PC. But from a business perspective, it makes perfect sense. You've just seen their earnings for fiscal 2. Gaming now, Xbox, earns more than Windows. And it wasn't just by a small margin like last time. The margin is enormous. So clearly, financially, this is a great decision for Microsoft. But as he says here, from a business perspective, I get it. But from a customer perspective, why wouldn't I go elsewhere? And as far as Microsoft's concerned, as long as you're buying their games, they just don't care. If you pay $70 for their games, they're okay with that. If you get it via Game Pass, they're okay with that. If you get it by some other means, as long as they're getting money from it, they're okay with that. The only reason now is Game Pass, and I'm not sure that's a good enough answer anymore. And again, this comes back to the last few years where they've really failed to deliver via Game Pass with their promise. And we've constantly been saying, hopefully next year, hopefully next year. I mean, the last quarter of this year, they've definitely delivered in spades, right? Especially if you're on PC with the extra games that came on, even more. But as you can see here, they're catering more for PC than they are for the console. But next year will be a real telltale sign on how this really develops, because they've got about 8 AAA games coming. Don't know if all of them are going to make it, but at that point, if they do deliver and the games are hitting from all cylinders, then yeah, at that point, I would comfortably say that the Xbox console with the Game Pass subscription Ultimate definitely justifies its purchase and reason to exist. But the Xbox console right now is pretty much a back compat machine. That's one of the biggest reasons why you would pick it up, because it does improve your back catalogue. Now he says here time for a change, but if you read further below, it actually just goes on to say that after all that, he's still sticking with Xbox, and as long as Xbox releases a console, he'll be there, because he's ingrained in the ecosystem. It's kind of trapped there now. Now we see this from Xbox Series XS, and this is now going more towards that this is an Xbox and them expanding to all regions of the console. Acquisitions are good now, and no PlayStation fan out there can ever say anything bad about this again. After the Kadakawa fiasco, where they were like, acquisition is great, this is all going to be exclusive, I don't want to see a single pony out there ever saying anything. Except for maybe one or two. Nibs did actually pretty much consistently say that acquisitions are bad. So I will give that one to him. But everyone else, acquisitions are great. It's wicked. It's amazing. It's the best thing for gaming. And now that Sony are doing it, it is the best thing since sliced bread. So as far as I'm concerned, regardless of how I feel about acquisitions, which as you can see can have really damaging effects on the brand in general for those hardcore players, it is what it is, and it is just going to go ahead, right? That's it. Now he says for Xbox targets in billions, who's next? You've got Nintendo at 62 billion, they're never going to sell. EA want to sell, they've known for a while. Take-Two, people are saying they'll never sell, but they're open to it, as we're going to see in a second. Namco Bandai, 14 million. Konami 12, Capcom 9, CD Projekt Red and Square Enix 4 million each, Sega as well 4 million. These especially are really, these 6 here, these 5, 6, Ubisoft 2 million, FromSoft 3 million, Sega 4 million, Square Enix 4 million, CD Projekt 4 billion, sorry, billions, not millions, right? Would be really easy pickups if they were willing to sell. But how are they going to buy them if they are a platform? That's the biggest problem that the ABK deal had, right? Because Xbox is a platform. And as we see here, the discussions that were happening previously, you had Kadakawa said maybe. Clearly they were interested. CDPR said no interest. Kojima said no. Capcom said maybe, so there's interest. Square Enix said no. Ballistic Moon is begging to be bought. Jetpack Interactive is begging to be bought. Take-Two said maybe, but we cost a lot. And as we have seen with Microsoft, that doesn't matter. Now, I will reiterate that any purchases made outside of the original Xbox Game Studios games should be multi-platform. That's my opinion. Just leave them as multi-platform, but day one on Game Pass. Day and date everywhere else, Game Pass, it would just be easier. But if they wanted to make an exclusive, I'm going to get to why they can do that. Ubisoft said maybe, but preferably not, because they want to buy it themselves. Arrowhead said maybe. Shift Up said maybe, but preferably not. Other Ocean is begging to be bought. Remedy is begging to be bought. Konami said no, but let's license together. So now we come back to the right side, where Xbox is everywhere, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because one of the big stipulations for Microsoft not being able to buy more studios, and believe me, more acquisitions are coming, especially with this new direction that Microsoft is going, they have been deliberately devaluing their console. Sarah Bond came out publicly and said, we are deliberately devaluing our console. And for a lot of people, that was like, well, why are they doing that? Why are they pushing this message? And the message is absolutely clear. If Xbox is no longer seen as a threat in the games industry, if they are seen to be putting their games on all other platforms, if they are seen as just another third party, which is what the PlayStation fans are constantly saying, and that's the message that's being put out there, and basically saying, you don't need an Xbox to play it, so our platform, our console, doesn't really matter. Yes, we have a storefront, but you can buy those games on Steam if you wanted to, and play them on PC. You can buy them on PlayStation Network, and play them on PlayStation. You can buy them wherever you want, even on an Android store, and play them on your phone. Can you do that with any other platform? No. So right now, Microsoft has deliberately devalued their platform so much that if they wanted to go for CDPR, or the Take-Twos, or the Ubisoft, or the Konami, or the Shift Up, or the Square Enix, the regulators won't what ground do they have based on their market share? It's been dwindled. They're everywhere. Xbox is now Play Anywhere. They don't have the platform. Right? To me, this is it. This is what they're aiming for. With the future, we're not talking next generation, maybe not even a generation after that, but with the distant future being cloud-enabled, playing everywhere, and that being the best place to play, you'll be walking in the streets or sitting down for a bus, you can put your phone on with unlimited data, connect your controller if you have one, and start playing, because the Wi-Fi 7, 8, 9 or whatever it will be, by that time will be perfectly good enough to actually play these games on the go. The infrastructure will be there. That is the future that everyone is heading to anyway. We'll get there eventually. But without the platform now being an actual threat, it's dwindling in console sales every single month. It's year on year down. Can the regulators come in and say, well, you're actually a really strong platform holder right now, so we can't allow you to buy Take-Two? No, they can't. They can't. And what are they going to do? Try and block the cloud again? I don't see that happening anymore. So as you can see, this whole Play Anywhere isn't just a thing to, piss the community off. There's a bigger plan here. And by devaluing the console, it opens up more doors for them to buy more studios and more publishers. And regardless of how people feel about it, after the Kadakawa deal, no one should say anything except for those that are opposed, and I've already mentioned that. But as of right now, you can bet your bottom dollar that in 2025 there will be more acquisitions. And they're going to go through quite smoothly, because Microsoft has put itself in a position where it's portraying itself as not a threat. But then we come to the other aspect of it, right? That's the economic side, and that's the Game Pass side of things. Making that Game Pass xCloud, option way more valuable. Making that partnership with Nvidia, with GeForce Now, way more valuable, because you'll be able to play those games through GeForce Now as well. Day one. As well as your xCloud. Day one. You can buy your games now and play them day one, at least select games. So, with that out the way, and that's the business side of things, trying to bolster the war chest for Game Pass. What does this mean for the consumers? Well, for the consumers, having more ways to play could be a great thing. Like for me, for example, having the ability to play my games on my PC or on my Steam Deck or on my Chromebook, has been a real blessing. Now, obviously, I don't have good internet at the moment, so since I've moved here since May, cloud gaming has been on a down road hill for me. But hopefully, when I move and I get good internet, cloud gaming will be back up for me. Cloud gaming in 23 was my main way of playing games. In 2024, it's not been because I've had bad internet, so the infrastructure isn't there globally to sustain it. And Microsoft noticed, which is why they're looking way ahead. But the ability for me to play my games cross-save between PC and Xbox has meant that I've been able to double my game time this year, and it's worked great. If I actually had an Asus ROG Ally X, I would probably be playing on that as well. I actually used to play games on my Meta Quest when my internet was good. So as you can see, with the opportunities that they provide, it means that I can game when certain appliances are busy and I can't get to them. And that's benefited me a lot. And for those gamers out there who aren't the hardcore generation like me, or like the ones that are dying for exclusives, that Play Anywhere just gives them more access to the games when they want it. At the end of the day, they are the consumer. You make the product for them and you go where they go. And as trends change, other companies like Sony will follow eventually. You're seeing Steam already with the Steam Deck, and now they're looking for a home console. And, they've got their games on the cloud already with GeForce Now. So they're doing exactly what Microsoft is doing, and Sony will follow soon. And Nintendo probably by 2028, 2030 will follow suit as well. This is why the faction on the right are okay with it. And they're the casuals, the normies, the youngsters, the Gen Zs, the Gen As. They're okay with it because they're brought up with the tablets and the mobiles and everything else. But for people like me, the oldies, we are more accustomed to a console, something more stationary. And within that whole Play Anywhere, I've got a stationary PC and a stationary console to play on. So I get both sides, but the community ultimately is so divided. For me, personally, I really like exclusives. I think it allows the game to be the best it can possibly be. But I also really appreciate the whole Play Anywhere aspect because it's benefited me personally. So when I said I was going to get to my view at the end, here it is. For me, I see both sides and I benefit from both sides. And with the games going to Game Pass day one, as long as they are kept to the high standard that I expect it to be and not delivered at 30 FPS and then 60 FPS in other platforms 6 months later, then I'm okay with that. But as an Xbox customer, I want the premium experience. And just because I'm getting it on Game Pass doesn't mean that I shouldn't get it. I shouldn't get the premium experience. I'm entitled to the premium experience more as an Xbox customer for an Xbox game on an Xbox platform, more, in my opinion, than anyone else that's not within that ecosystem. And as such, that's where I think they need to improve. Exclusives are really important. They need to draw a line and say, right, these are the games that, could go on a case-by-case basis, but we draw a line here. And they're not going to do that, I know, because they've already said that with the no red line, for obvious reasons that I've described in previous videos. But that's where they need to be, and they're not going there. And they're not going to go there. And I wish that they would go there, because you need that transparency, and without the transparency and the actual messaging coming forward that they know what the hell they're doing, even though I can see where they're going, I can see what they want to do, the average consumer cannot. And like I said in my stream, when I went into Bexley Heath's game store, not gaming specific, but there's another video game store there, they were looking at Doom and saying that this is exclusive to PlayStation 5. So clearly the messaging from Microsoft is completely and utterly off. If they can turn around and pass on and say that Doom Dark Ages is exclusive to PS5, there is something seriously wrong with the messaging there. And they need to fix that. Right? That's it. That's it. The divide is going to be there until the messaging from Microsoft is crystal clear. Until you have Phil Spencer, Satya Nadella, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty all coming together, united and in sync with the messaging, so they're not saying different things at different times. As King David would say, they've got too many cooks in the house. What they need to do is consolidate that into a single cook with one message and put it out there and leave it there, and that's it. And whether people like it or not is up to them, and they can decide what they want to do. But this divide in the community is horrible to see at the moment. At the start of the year, at the end of last year, the community was one. In less than 12 months, Microsoft has managed to fragment the whole community. And this is all down to their bad messaging. This is all down to their poor messaging. And this is all down to their undecisiveness. Giving different messages, different answers at every turn they possibly can get. And all they're doing is hurting their hardcore community. And if they don't care about their hardcore community anymore, just come out and say it. Don't let your actions do the talking. Grow a pair of balls and come out and actually say, you don't matter to us anymore. They matter. And if that's not good enough for you, then go elsewhere. But we know that you are still going to buy our games, and we're happy with that. And then those consumers can go and do what the hell they like. But that's how I see it. That's my thoughts on this. When Microsoft release another console, not if, when, I'm going to be there day one buying it. I will. Because I like the option of using anything around my house to be able to play my Xbox games. Because I've got kids. It benefits me. So I'm there. I've got my back compat as well. So I've got a lot of games that I can play. But that's not the same for everyone. And at the end of the day, Microsoft just has to come out, pick a lane, and just go forward with it. But I do believe that this whole situation with this is an Xbox, devaluing the console, and all of this, it's 2025, you're going to see a hell of a lot more acquisitions. A lot of people are speculating Take-Two. A lot of people are laughing at Take-Two. But if they've been open for it, the fact that they said maybe means that they are open to it. Right? They are open to that transaction if the money is right. And unlike Sony, who cannot afford Kadokawa at what, 4 billion, 5 billion, 6 billion, whatever it was, I didn't look it up, but I know the value increased because of the interest. And in the end, they had to settle with 10% shares, buying 8% more. Microsoft is such a big company where they can afford to do that and put those games day and date onto Game Pass. And for those saying that, Grand Theft Auto could never be on Game Pass, they said that about Call of Duty as well. And look where that got them. They said never in a million years Call of Duty would be on Game Pass. And one of the biggest games ever is on Game Pass day one. So take that as you will. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that discussion. I know this was a long video, but hopefully you'll have enjoyed it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remain legend.